could I go? Oh, where could I go? Seeking a refuge for my soul, needing a friend to save me in the end. Where could I go but to the Lord? Neighbors are kind, I love them everyone. We get along in sweet accord. But when my soul needs manna from above, where could I go but to the Lord? Where could I go? Oh, where could I go? Seeking a refuge for my soul, needing a friend to save me in the end. Where could I go but to the Lord? Life here is grand, with friends I love so dear. Comfort I get from God's own word. Yet when I face the chilling hand of death, where could I go but to the Lord? Where could I go? Oh, where could I go? Seeking a refuge for my soul, needing a friend to save me in the end. Where could I go but to the Lord? Where could I go? Oh, where could I go? Seeking a refuge for my soul, needing a friend to save me in the end. Where could I go but to the Lord?
I'm Bill Mays with a Stepping Stone Bible devotional thought brought to you on behalf of the Krum Church of Christ. Today's Stepping Stone on this Sunday morning, June the 30th of the year 2024, is entitled Israel, He Who Strives with God. Stepping Stone emails are usually sent out each Wednesday. However, I will be out of my office this week and have chosen to send this email out a few days early rather than wait till I return to my office next week. We begin by reading Genesis 32 verses 24 through 32. There we find, then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he had not prevailed against him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was dislocated while he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." But he said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And so he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then he said, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have contended with God and with men and have prevailed." Jacob asked him and said, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it you ask my name?" And he blessed him there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, "I've seen God face to face, yet my life has been spared." Now the sun rose upon him just as he crossed over Peniel, and he was limping on his hip. Therefore, to this day, the sons of Israel do not eat the tendon of the hip, which is in the socket of the hip, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip and the tendon of the hip. All kinds of events were happening in Jacob's life. He was on his way to meet his brother Esau, and he feared for his life, Genesis 32 verse 11, and he should fear for his life. Esau was born before his fraternal twin brother Jacob and was considered to be the oldest with all the rights and privileges brought on by that honor. But Jacob had taken Esau's birthright with the price of a bowl of stew in Genesis 25, verses 30 through 34. Then Jacob stole Esau's blessing from their father by deception. Esau was soon only waiting for Isaac to die so he could kill his brother Jacob, as we read in Genesis 27, verse 41. Jacob had to flee for his life by going back to the family home country at Haran to find a wife. The Lord speaks to Jacob at Bethel in Genesis chapter 28. Jacob was then deceived by his own father-in-law multiple times in Genesis 29 and chapter 30 and 31, in the likeness of the way that Jacob had deceived his own brother Esau. God then tells Jacob to return to the land of his birth in Genesis 31, verse 13. By this point in his life, Jacob had learned an important lesson in humility. Jacob sends messengers to his brother as Jacob is returning home and calls Esau Lord. Jacob prays to God for help and protection in Genesis 32, verses 9 through 12. Then we read that Esau is bringing 400 men as he comes to meet Jacob. Jacob fears the worst and lines up his family in order to escape with his life if he is attacked by Esau. The night before Esau arrives, Jacob finds himself wrestling with an unknown man. This was an angel sent by God, as we find in Hosea 12, verse 4. The angel does not seem to seek to overcome Jacob and allows Jacob to try and win the battle all night. When it is time for the angel to overcome Jacob, he simply touches the socket of Jacob's hip and the wrestling was over. Jacob's name, meaning supplanter, is changed to Israel, meaning he who strives with God. While Jacob sought to overcome God's angel, he was also striving against God. I see this as a warning to Jacob. If you spend your life striving with God, you're going to lose in the end. Hence the touch of the hip. Jacob seemed to be holding his own against the angel for a time. This symbolized Jacob's life as he spent his life fighting against both God and man. In the end, Jacob is finally a humbled man. He is humbled by the events that God had allowed in his life. I challenge you to allow this event in Jacob's life to inspire righteous humility before God in your life. If you spend your own life striving with God, you will always lose in the end. It is far, far better to humbly serve God each day in your life. Later this week, our nation will celebrate its founding on Independence Day, July the 4th. It will mark the 248th year since the adoption of the Declaration of Independence on July the 4th, 1776, when the United States declared independence from Great Britain. May we not forget Proverbs 14:34, where we are reminded that righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a disgrace to any people. May we, in a likeness of Jacob, also be humbled and contrite by the history that God has allowed us to experience in this nation and learn from it. This is an election year. May we seek the prayerful request of Paul in 1 Timothy 2, 1 through 2, where Paul writes to Timothy, seeking him to pray First of all, then, I urge that requests, prayers, intercession, and thanksgiving be made in behalf of all people, for kings and all who are in authority, so that we may lead a tranquil and quiet life in all godliness and dignity. There could be no better prayerful request for Christians in this nation or any nation at any time in any year. If the Krum Church of Christ can be of any help to you spiritually, please go to this website, find their email address, and let them know what they can do to help you in drawing closer to Jesus Christ. I always want to invite you to the services of the Krum Church of Christ that meets at 319 North 3rd Street in Krum for Sunday Bible study at 9:30 a.m., Sunday worship at 10:30 a.m., and Wednesday Bible study at 6:45 p.m. God bless, be well, and I hope you'll choose again next week to join us for another Stepping Stone Bible devotional thought.